Good evening. This is Arlo Johnson from Vernon, British Columbia at 9 p.m. on November the 21st, 2023. Hope you all are well and, hope you're all well and feeling good. Thank you. Now, the thing is, I I saw something on the news today, on internet news, I guess you'd call it. I don't know what it was, what group it was, but they were reporting on a government body that is supposed to be some sort of watchdog for, discrimination and this and that in Canada. And this body reported that they felt that Christmas was very, discriminating against people who weren't Christian or who weren't, and as such, it should be most likely, changed or modified or whatever. When I saw that, I just looked at it for a minute and I thought, oh, for God's sake, what next? And then I started to think about it, and it really bothered me. It's one of those things that can bother me till hell freezes over, but I can't do anything about it. It's going to carry on and fester away. And what really bothers me is that it's our own government that does this to people. Number one is they encourage immigration, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with immigration, the right kind. And but one of the main reasons they're doing it is because we kill our own children. I mean, we would have a much bigger population now if we hadn't. But anyway, what is the policy here? When people immigrate to this country, then they complain that we are discriminating against them if we carry on our own traditions that have been ours for hundreds of years. My idea was that if you immigrated to a country, you immigrated to that country. You didn't come in with your own stuff and say, now you have to bend your rules to fit us. And that's what they're doing. And they're justifying it, that everyone should be treated equally and all that sort of stuff. Nothing wrong with that. But it's just absolutely insane for a government body that people pay taxes for to do that against their own culture. Not good. And, the thing is, people in this country are so passive that all this stuff will just happen. There'll be no resistance against it. People are just absolutely passive sheep. And basically, people in Canada now operate on fear. It's a low-level fear, looking over your shoulder type thing, that if you don't do what this powerful elite wants you to do, you'll be ostracized, you'll be this, you'll be that. When I grew up, we didn't have that feeling. I know darn well we didn't. No. But now, with mass media and surveillance and the government knowing everything about you, it can be done. So the thing is, it's not a good scenario when that happens. Now, here's the problem is, when I say this to you, I'm saying this because I knew of a time that was different from now, much different. And it wasn't, we didn't have all the fancy all the fancy, gimmicks and doodads and vehicles and, TVs and all that stuff. No, we didn't have that. But we had something else. We had basically peace of mind. When I was young, and I mean young, like, 10, 12, 14 years old, we got I think it was the Free Press Weekly, and I think we could get it maybe once a week, I'm not sure. And then the Western Producer came once a month. If you wanted to order something, you ordered from Eaton's and the catalog would come out, and it would be delivered to the post office, and you go and pick it up. That wasn't in effect right away, but it was in effect pretty early on. And things were totally different. Family was the thing. Family was the whole thing. Everything you did revolved around your family. And in my case, my relations lived all around us. 4 or 5 different families. And they all had, not large families, but 3 or 4 kids in each one. And it never failed. Every weekend we were either there at one of them, or they were at our place, or we went and met at somewhere else. It just was, I had all kinds of, I don't know how many cousins I had. And I remember when I was maybe 8, 9, having doing Christmas at Grandpa's place, where I was born actually, and there was I think close to 30 grandchildren there. Can you imagine that? Grandpa would sit in the corner in a chair next to the big tree, and we all had to go up in front of him, and we had to recite something or sing a little song or do something before we got our bag. And he'd laugh about it. He was handing them out. And I remember that house being so full of people that it wasn't even funny. And that's one Christmas in particular. I remember the place was full. We were, running around excited, kind of, just because of everybody together here at home. My gosh. And it was snow outside, pretty deep snow, and winter, full blast winter. And yet in that house it was so bright and full of people, wall to wall people. And I think it would be about like 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night after the big Christmas meal, and everybody, they'd finished the meal and cleaned the table off and basically got supper cleaned away. And somebody said, "Oh, I think I can hear him." And they said, "Yeah, but Santa, can you hear Santa?" "Oh, no." And they're standing looking in the window like this, just glued, And all of a sudden, somebody kind of cracked the door open, and they could hear these bells coming down. Bells. Drum, 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 drum. In the dark, Here's these bells coming. And, oh, it's going to be Santa Claus. Oh. And, our eyes were so big that were just like that. And my uncle, Dad's brother, liked doing things like that. He put on a big red suit and a thing and had a big bag on him. He had gone out and he had all his bells wrapped up in blankets so they wouldn't dingle, make a noise. And he took these two horses and a sleigh and drove down the road a bit and then turned around, put the bells on the horses, and then came trotting into the yard in the dark. And we could hear these bells coming. And he stopped, and he was still sort of in the dark, and I could see him coming in the snow, walking with this big red suit on and a big bag on him. Ho, 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 Well, I tell you, I remember that. I was so excited, and all us kids were just beside ourselves. And he'd come, sit down, and he had to, say, be a good boy and a good girl. and he loved doing that. And that stuck with me. In a couple of months, I'll be 90 years old. And I tell you, that memory is as clear as a bell. And that was most likely 1940 something. I don't know what. I don't know. 42, something like that. And, well, let's see, 1934, 6. Yeah, well, 19, that'll be in about 1942. And things like that, it's such a thing. I mean, those kind of memories never leave you. No. Well, I've ranted now about these elite do-gooders who say that the immigrant has more rights than the original people living here, and they're actually doing that. They're saying that there should be law. They want the government to make that a fact, because Christians are, what did it say? They are. They don't forget now. They won't recognize anybody else, and da 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 da. That's not true. But I remember reading about one prime minister, and I forget who it was, Saint Laurent or who it was at one time, and he basically stood up in Montreal and said, that if people don't immigrate, people who immigrate to Canada have to become Canadians or they shouldn't come. And he made a big speech about that. And, I agree with that. Why should they come to this country if they don't want to be here? If they don't want to be in our country? Well, that's the situation we're in now. I went up to the Vernon Army camp a couple of years ago, and on July 1st, they have the big ball game things going on. I don't know how many ball teams from around the country, hundreds. And anyway, at July 1st, and I went up there about, I don't know, 5, 6 o'clock at night, 6, maybe 6, 7 o'clock, and I took a chair because I knew I wanted to sit out. I had to sit. And I packed the chair up there and up to the stage, and where they were all meeting, and they had a band there and whatever, and some people speaking. And anyway, there was all kinds of people there because the fireworks were going to be going on, and as soon as it got dark. And this woman came on the mic and said, "Well, we're going to be getting ready to sing "O Canada," or a band is going to play "O Canada," and after "O Canada," and if it's dark enough, the fireworks will begin." So the band started up, and I was sitting in this chair, and beside me, to the left of me on the ground, on blankets, was two I don't know, Filipino or who they were brown-skinned people, but their families, they were all sitting on the blanket with their kids, everything else, and they started playing "O Canada," and people stood up, and poor old Canada, and I looked down, and these people just sat there and looked around, looked up a little bit, never moved an inch. And we stood there saying, "Oh, Canada," and they just sat on the ground on their blankets. And I thought, you know, this country allows that to, and allows that for all the wrong reasons. That's not the right reason. But it, you know, that's what's here. It permeates the whole country, and it's sad. Now people say, "Oh, well, their culture is just as important as ours." No doubt about it. But if you come here, you should be leaving your culture where you came from and adopting this in this country. That's why you came here. But I know that doesn't apply. They say I'm discriminatory or something like that. That's why I say people now have to live in fear of being labeled, and it's a fear, and it controls people. And it's just a low-level fear. It doesn't have to be a big fear of any kind, but it's just a looking over your shoulder type of fear. Wondering, oh, I wonder if that, you know, terrible. Nobody should live that way. Yeah, I don't know. You know, this country was given to the people who settled it, and was a great gift, because there's really no country like this country. When you look at the plains and the mountains and the land, the good land, that's a gift from God, I'll tell you. And as usual, I guess what it is if you're used to being given things and live with, you know, pretty good conditions, you get to expect it, you don't appreciate it, and that happens. That's exactly what happens. And there's no way to make people appreciate something unless they don't want to. I'm talking like an old man now. But what I'm saying is, from my perspective, that's it. Yours could be a lot different, I don't doubt it is. But from my perspective, from long perspective, it's too bad, but it's going to happen. And for all the people that say, well, you can't have oil and gas, you can't have plastic bags, you can't do this. I listened to this one woman who said, when I go to the store, practically 95% at least of everything I buy is in plastic containers of some kind, or wrapping or coverings, but they won't let me put it in a bag. That makes sense. I see that the Supreme Court has knocked them down, the government down and said you can't do that. That's too broad. Plastic by itself is not toxic. And of course the government doesn't want to listen to that. They want to appeal that right now. And that's exactly what I've thought all along, is that you're getting way carried away. You would be much better off to promote a plastic bag, you say, that goes in the landfill. Well, so does all the boxes and everything else that comes out of a store. We don't eat that. That goes in the garbage. And that ends up in the landfill. There isn't one thing that doesn't. You could encourage people to make compostable products, bags that disintegrate after a year or something. And I'm sure they could make that. And if you're really sincere about it, okay, so it costs 1 cent more or something. But it seems like, I said if mankind was in charge of the weather, we'd have been frozen out or boiled to death a long time ago. We can't run it. So, this world is disposable. God said he's going to create a new world and a new heaven, a new earth and a new heaven. People don't seem to believe that, because a lot of them say, we're going to save this planet, even if it kills you, which is about what they're planning on doing. And, you know, and no matter how you slice it or whatever, you can't stop that insanity from happening. That's the sad part. The good part is, for me, that I'll be 90 in April. The 1950s were the greatest decade in the history of this country. And I was 16 years old in 1950 and I had a car. Ha! Yes. Talk about living during a good time in this country. That was the best time in this country. And I got to live it. I thank God for that all the time, that, you know, how did I end up coming into the world when I did? I wasn't in control of nothing. I don't know if that's planned or what, but whatever it is, I thank God for it. And when I say that, I mean that. You know, not everybody has been given that chance to live that way. Had a good family, grew up in a, you know, a farm family. You can't get better than that. Yeah. But anyway, I guess we'll just leave it at that and say thank you very much. God bless you, and we'll talk to you later.